My son spoke Japanese thinking I didn't understand, and he said something I never forgot. Prologue, the secret language. There are moments in life that divide your existence into before and after. Moments so profound that everything you thought you knew gets rewritten in an instant. For me, that moment came on a rainy Tuesday evening in September when I overheard my son speaking Japanese to his wife, believing I couldn't understand a word. But I understood every single syllable. And what he said shattered my heart into 1,000 pieces. My name is Catherine Walsh. I'm 67 years old, a widow, a mother of 2, and a grandmother of 4. I spent 35 years teaching high school mathematics in Seattle, Washington. I'm also fluent in Japanese, a fact that almost no one in my life knows, including my children. This is the story of how a secret I kept for decades became the key to uncovering a betrayal I never saw coming. It's a story about family, deception, inheritance, and the moment when silence becomes the most powerful weapon you possess. To understand how I came to speak fluent Japanese without anyone knowing, you need to go back 50 years, to when I was a 17-year-old girl with dreams of seeing the world. It was 1973, and I'd just graduated from high school in Portland, Oregon. My father, Thomas Bennett, worked for an American trading company that had recently opened an office in Tokyo. The company offered him a 3-year assignment in Japan, and my father, who'd always been adventurous, accepted immediately. My mother was less enthusiastic. She was a traditional woman who'd never lived more than 20 miles from where she'd been born. The idea of moving to a foreign country where she didn't speak the language terrified her. But she loved my father, and she went. I was thrilled. While my high school friends were planning community college or secretarial school, I was moving to Tokyo. It felt like the adventure of a lifetime. We arrived in Japan in August of 1973. The heat was oppressive, the city was overwhelming, and everything was utterly foreign. The language, the food, the customs, it was like landing on another planet. My mother struggled. She spent most of those first months crying in our apartment, refusing to go outside unless absolutely necessary. She never learned more than basic survival phrases in Japanese. She counted down the days until we could return to Oregon. But I fell in love with Japan. I enrolled in an international school for the children of foreign workers, but I was determined to really learn the language and culture. I convinced my father to hire a private tutor, an elderly Japanese woman named Yamamoto-sensei who taught English during the war and spoke perfect, if formal, English herself. "If you want to truly understand Japan," she told me on our first day, "you must learn to think in Japanese, not just translate from English. You must understand the spaces between the words, the things we don't say but imply." I was a dedicated student. While my mother hid in our apartment and my father worked long hours at his office, I studied. 4 hours a day, 6 days a week. Kanji characters until my hand cramped. Grammar patterns until I dreamed in Japanese. Conversation practice until Yamamoto-sensei said my accent was nearly perfect. "You have a gift for language," she told me. "And more importantly, you have respect. You don't just want to speak Japanese, you want to understand Japanese people. That's rare in foreigners." By the end of our first year, I was functionally fluent. By the end of our second year, I could read newspapers and novels. By the time we returned to the United States 3 years later, I was fluent enough to work as an interpreter, though I never did. The Japan years were also when I met James Walsh. James was the son of another American executive, 2 years older than me, studying engineering at the international school. He was handsome and kind, with an easy smile and a gentle manner. We started dating during my second year in Tokyo. James learned some Japanese too, enough to order food and handle basic conversations. But he never had the passion for it that I did. He was focused on his engineering studies, on preparing for university back in the States. When our families returned to America, his to Seattle, mine back to Portland, we tried to maintain a long-distance relationship. It lasted through my first 2 years of college. Then James proposed. I said yes, and I transferred to the University of Washington to be near him. We married young. I was 21, he was 23. Everyone said we were too young, that we should wait, but we were in love and convinced we knew better than everyone else. The early years of marriage were good. I finished my degree in mathematics education. James got his engineering degree and landed a good job at Boeing. We bought a small house in a Seattle suburb. We were building a life. Our first son, Michael, was born when I was 24. Our second son, David, came 2 years later. And somewhere in the chaos of young motherhood, the diapers and bottles and sleepless nights, my Japanese got packed away like the kimonos I'd bought in Tokyo. There was no time for it, no use for it. We lived in a Seattle suburb where everyone spoke English. My Japanese books sat in boxes in the garage. My language skills grew rusty from disuse. "Do you ever miss Japan?" James asked me once when the boys were little. "Sometimes," I admitted, "but this is our life now, this is home." That should have been the end of my Japanese story. A skill learned young, used briefly, then abandoned as life moved forward. But language is like riding a bicycle. You never fully forget. And decades later, that forgotten skill would become the key to understanding a truth my son tried desperately to hide from me. James and I had a good marriage for 20 years. Not perfect, no marriage is, but good. We raised our boys, built careers, saved for retirement. James advanced at Boeing, eventually becoming a senior engineer on commercial aircraft projects. I taught mathematics at the local high school, where I was known for being tough but fair. Michael, our oldest, was always the ambitious one. Straight A's in school, student body president, the kid who had a 10-year plan by the time he was 15. He got into Stanford on a partial scholarship, studied business, and graduated near the top of his class. He was driven, focused, and determined to be successful. David, our younger son, was different. More laid back, more creative. He studied art history in college, spent a year backpacking through Europe after graduation, and eventually became a museum curator. He married a lovely woman named Sophie, and they gave us 2 beautiful grandchildren. Both boys made us proud in different ways. Michael met his wife, Jennifer, during his junior year at Stanford. She was studying economics, came from a wealthy family in Southern California, and had the same ambitious drive that Michael had. They married right after graduation and moved to San Francisco, where Michael took a job at a venture capital firm. Jennifer was difficult to warm to, beautiful, intelligent, but cold. She smiled at all the right times and said all the right things, but there was no warmth behind it. She reminded me of a perfectly programmed robot going through the motions of human interaction. "I think she's nice," James said when I mentioned my reservations. "She's polite. That's not the same as nice." "You're being too judgmental. Give her a chance." So I tried. I really tried. Over the years, I made efforts to connect with Jennifer. I asked about her work, her interests, her family. I sent birthday cards and Christmas presents. I invited them to dinner whenever they visited Seattle. Jennifer was always cordial, always appropriate, but I never felt like she actually liked me. There was a distance there, a wall I couldn't penetrate. Michael seemed happy enough, though. His career flourished. Within 5 years, he'd made partner at his firm. Within 10 years, he'd started his own venture capital company with several partners. Money flowed in. They bought a mansion in Pacific Heights, one of San Francisco's most expensive neighborhoods. They had 2 children, Connor and Emma, who attended elite private schools. David's life was more modest, but I thought happier. He and Sophie lived in a comfortable house in Seattle, not far from James and me. Their children, Oliver and Lily, went to public school. They took camping vacations instead of trips to Europe. They seemed content. Then, 23 years into our marriage, James was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. It was devastating and swift. 6 months from diagnosis to death. 6 months of watching the man I loved waste away, of hospitals and treatments and hope that dwindled with each passing day. Michael visited twice during those 6 months, both times brief weekend trips, both times spent mostly on his phone dealing with urgent business matters. Jennifer came once, stayed for an afternoon, and spent the entire time looking uncomfortable in the hospital room. David, on the other hand, was there constantly. He rearranged his work schedule to drive me to appointments. Sophie brought meals. The kids made cards for their grandpa. They were present in a way that Michael's family simply wasn't. "Michael is busy building his career," James said weakly from his hospital bed, always making excuses for our oldest son. "He has responsibilities, I understand." But I didn't understand. I didn't understand how a career could be more important than being with your dying father. James passed away on a Wednesday morning in November. I was holding his hand. David was there too. Michael was on a business trip to New York and couldn't change his flight in time. At the funeral, Michael gave a beautiful eulogy about what a great father James had been, how much he'd learned from him, how deeply he'd miss him. People cried. Michael's voice broke in all the right places. But I kept thinking about those 6 months when James was dying, when Michael was too busy to visit. Words are cheap. Presence is what matters. After James died, I threw myself into work. Teaching kept me busy, kept my mind occupied. The grief was crushing, but I functioned. I showed up. I did what needed to be done. James had been practical about his death. He'd updated his will 6 months before his diagnosis. One of those things you do in your 40s when you start thinking about mortality, but don't actually expect to die anytime soon. The will was straightforward. Everything to me, with provisions that upon my death, the estate would be split equally between Michael and David. The estate wasn't enormous, but it was substantial. The house, which we'd bought for $180,000 in 1980, was now worth over $800,000 thanks to Seattle's real estate boom. James had a good pension from Boeing and a healthy 401k. Life insurance. Savings. All told, I was comfortable. Not wealthy like Michael, but comfortable. I retired from teaching 2 years after James died. I was 62, eligible for early retirement, and I was tired. Tired of working, tired of maintaining the house by myself, tired of being alone. David and Sophie suggested I sell the house and move into a smaller place, maybe a condo that would require less maintenance. It was good advice, but I couldn't bring myself to leave the home where I'd raised my children, where James and I had built our life together. "I'll think about it," I told them. The years passed. Connor and Emma, Michael's children, graduated from their expensive private schools and went to prestigious universities. Oliver and Lily, David's children, thrived in public school and community activities. I saw David's family weekly, dinner every Sunday, holidays together, regular phone calls. I saw Michael's family once or twice a year, usually when they deigned to visit Seattle for Christmas. The distance between Michael and me grew wider. Our phone conversations became shorter, more perfunctory. "How are you?" "Fine." "How are the kids?" "Good." "Okay, well, I should go, talk soon." I told myself it was fine. Michael had his own life, his own family. He was successful and busy. I shouldn't expect more. But deep down, it hurt. It hurt that my oldest son seemed to have so little time for me. It hurt that his children barely knew me. It hurt that Jennifer never made any effort to include me in their lives. And then came my 67th birthday, this past September. That's when everything changed. My 67th birthday fell on a Tuesday. David and Sophie took me out to dinner on Saturday, a lovely meal at my favorite Italian restaurant. The grandchildren gave me cards they'd made themselves. It was simple and sweet and exactly what I wanted. I didn't expect to hear from Michael. We typically exchanged brief phone calls on birthdays and holidays, and I assumed this year would be no different. But on Tuesday morning, my actual birthday, I received a text from Michael. "Jennifer and I would like to take you to dinner tonight for your birthday. We're in Seattle for a few days. Can we pick you up at 6? I was surprised and, I'll admit, pleased. It had been almost a year since I'd seen Michael in person. Maybe he was making an effort. Maybe he'd realized how distant we'd become and wanted to fix it. I texted back, "That would be lovely, thank you." I spent the afternoon getting ready, choosing a nice dress, doing my hair. I felt silly getting so dressed up for dinner with my own son, but I wanted to look nice. I wanted him to see that I was doing well, that I was taking care of myself. Michael and Jennifer arrived precisely at 6 in a rented luxury sedan. Michael looked successful in an expensive suit. Jennifer wore designer clothes and carried a handbag that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. "Happy birthday, Mom," Michael said, giving me a brief hug. "Happy birthday, Catherine," Jennifer added, with her practiced smile. "Thank you both for coming. This is a lovely surprise." "We wanted to see you," Michael said as we got into the car. "It's been too long." He drove us to one of Seattle's most expensive restaurants, the kind of place with a months-long waiting list for reservations. Michael, apparently, had connections. The meal was exquisite. Multiple courses, wine pairings, impeccable service. Michael talked about his business, about Connor and Emma's achievements at their universities, about a recent trip to Napa Valley. Jennifer added comments here and there but mostly seemed distracted, checking her phone periodically. I told them about David's family, about my volunteer work at the library, about a book club I'd joined. Michael listened with polite interest, but kept steering the conversation back to his own life. After dessert, a beautiful chocolate creation that the restaurant had prepared with "Happy Birthday, Catherine" written in sauce on the plate, Michael ordered coffee for all of us. "Mom, there's something Jennifer and I wanted to discuss with you," he said, his tone shifting to something more serious. "Oh," I set down my fork. "It's about the house." I felt a prickle of unease. "What about it?" "Well, you've been living alone in that big house for 5 years now. Don't you think it's time to consider downsizing, moving into something more manageable?" It was the same conversation David had been gently suggesting for years. But coming from Michael, who rarely called and almost never visited, it felt different. "I like the house," I said carefully. "It's my home." Of course, but it's a lot of maintenance for one person. The yard alone must be exhausting to keep up." "I hire a landscaping service. It's not a problem." Michael exchanged a glance with Jennifer. "The thing is, Mom, we've been thinking about this a lot. That house is sitting on a lot of valuable real estate. The Seattle market has exploded. You could probably sell it for close to $1 million now." "I'm not interested in selling." "Just hear me out." Michael leaned forward. "If you sold the house and moved into a nice condo, maybe one of those senior living communities with activities and social opportunities, you'd free up a significant amount of capital. You could use that money to really enjoy your retirement. Travel, hobbies, whatever you want." "I am enjoying my retirement." "Living alone in a big empty house." Jennifer spoke up for the first time, her voice sympathetic but with an edge underneath. "Catherine, we're worried about you. What if something happens? What if you fall and no one's there to help you?" "I have my phone. I have David 5 minutes away. I have neighbors." "But David has his own family to worry about," Michael said. "We don't want you to be a burden on him." "I'm not a burden on anyone. David and I see each other because we both want to, not out of obligation." "Of course," Michael's smile was tight. "I'm just saying having capital from the house sale would give you more options, more independence." I studied my son's face. There was something rehearsed about this conversation, something planned. "Michael, why are you really here? This isn't about my well-being. What's going on?" He had the grace to look uncomfortable. "I don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do. You fly up from San Francisco on my birthday, the first time you've visited in a year, and you take me to an expensive dinner, and now you're pressuring me to sell my house. Why?" "We're not pressuring you. We're making a suggestion." "A suggestion that benefits you somehow. How, Michael? Do you need money?" "No, God, no. Mom, I'm very successful. I don't need your money." "Then what is this about?" Jennifer set down her wine glass. "Catherine, I think you're being unnecessarily defensive. Michael is trying to look out for your best interests." "My best interests," I interrupted, "are to stay in my home where I'm comfortable and happy. If and when I decide to sell, it will be my decision." "Of course it's your decision," Michael said quickly. "We're not trying to tell you what to do. We just wanted to present the option." Option noted. Can we please talk about something else? The rest of the dinner was strained. Michael tried to recapture the earlier pleasant tone, but the damage was done. I couldn't shake the feeling that this entire birthday celebration had been a setup, a way to butter me up before making their pitch about the house. They drove me home in uncomfortable silence. Michael walked me to my door. Mom, I'm sorry if we upset you. That wasn't our intention. What was your intention, Michael? He sighed. We really are worried about you. This house is too much for you. We think you'd be happier somewhere else. I'm perfectly happy where I am. Okay, we'll drop it. He kissed my cheek. Happy birthday, Mom. I love you. I love you too. I watched them drive away, feeling unsettled. Something about that conversation hadn't felt right. It felt calculated, strategic. Michael wasn't the type to fly up from San Francisco just to take me to dinner. There had to be more to it. But I couldn't figure out what. I went inside, changed into comfortable clothes, and was about to make myself tea when my phone rang. It was David. Hey, Mom, just calling to say happy birthday again. Did you have a good day? Interesting day. Michael and Jennifer took me to dinner. Really? That's nice. Unexpected but nice. David, do you know anything about Michael wanting me to sell the house? There was a pause on the other end. He's mentioned it to me a few times over the past couple of months. He has. What exactly did he say? Just that he thinks you should consider downsizing, that the house is too big for one person. Pretty much what you and I have discussed before. But why is he so interested in it now? He's never cared about my living situation before. I don't know, Mom. Maybe he's genuinely concerned. Or maybe there's something else going on. Like what? I don't know, but something felt off about tonight. David was quiet for a moment. Do you want me to talk to him, find out what's really going on? No, don't do that. It'll just cause family drama. I'm probably being paranoid. You're not paranoid, you're perceptive. There's a difference. David paused. Mom, just be careful, okay? Michael's changed a lot over the years. He's not the same person he was when we were kids. I know. After we hung up, I sat in my living room. The same living room where I'd rocked my bobbies to sleep, where James and I had watched movies on countless weekend nights, where we'd hosted Thanksgiving dinners and Christmas mornings, and I felt a deep sadness. My oldest son had become a stranger. Somewhere along the way, between his success and his wealthy wife and his exclusive lifestyle, he'd lost touch with who he used to be. Or maybe he'd always been this way, and I'd just been too blind to see it. I went to bed that night feeling uneasy, with questions I couldn't answer circling in my mind. I had no idea that the answers would come in the most unexpected way possible, through a language I hadn't spoken in decades, in a conversation I was never meant to understand. 3 days after my birthday dinner, I received a text from Michael. Mom, Jennifer, and I extended our trip. We'd love to take you to lunch tomorrow if you're free. There are some things we'd like to discuss. More things to discuss. My unease from the birthday dinner returned, but I agreed to meet them. Maybe I'd misread the situation. Maybe they genuinely were just concerned about me. We met at a quiet bistro near my house. It was a Thursday afternoon, and the restaurant was only half full. Michael and Jennifer were already seated when I arrived, looking at menus and talking quietly. I approached the table, and as I got closer, I heard Jennifer say something that stopped me in my tracks. She was speaking Japanese. My Japanese was rusty. I hadn't used it in decades, but I understood her clearly. Kanojo wa tatimo genkona desu, kori wa muzukashi I kamashire mason. She's very stubborn. This might be difficult. Michael responded, also in Japanese. Deijibu keikaku ga aru. It's okay, I have a plan. I stood frozen a few feet from their table, my mind reeling. Michael spoke Japanese. Since when? And why were they speaking it now in a restaurant in Seattle? They hadn't seen me yet. I quickly stepped back behind a partial wall and pulled out my phone, pretending to check messages while I listened. Kanojo ga ai o uranai nara do suru, Jennifer asked. If she won't sell the house, what do we do? Hoteki na sentakashi ga eru, Michael replied. There are legal options. Sorwa jikin ga kakaru, Jennifer said. That will take time. Jikin wa eru. Kanojo wa furo, sashate wadashitachi wa mat uru kodo ga dekaru. We have time. She's old and we can wait. My blood ran cold. They were discussing me, discussing the house, discussing legal options if I wouldn't sell. And that last comment, about me being old and them being able to wait, carried an implication that made me feel sick. I took a deep breath, composed myself, and walked around the wall to their table as if I'd just arrived. Hello, I said brightly. Sorry I'm a bit late, traffic was terrible. They both startled slightly, quickly switching to English. Mom, no problem, we just got here ourselves, Michael said, standing to hug me. Hi, Catherine, Jennifer smiled that practiced smile. I sat down, my mind racing. Why had Michael learned Japanese? When had he learned it? And most importantly, what were they planning regarding my house? So, I said, picking up my menu, what did you want to discuss? Michael and Jennifer exchanged a glance. Actually, we wanted to apologize for the other night, Michael said. We realized after we left that we probably came on too strong about the house thing. It's fine, really. No, it's not fine. It's your house, your decision. We had no right to pressure you. I studied his face. He looked sincere, but I just heard him discussing legal options in a language he didn't think I understood. Thank you for saying that. We do worry about you, though, Jennifer added, living alone at your age. I'm 67, not 97. I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself. Of course you are, Michael said quickly. Jennifer didn't mean. It's fine, let's just enjoy lunch. We ordered, and the conversation moved to safer topics. Michael talked about Connor's internship at a prestigious investment bank. Jennifer mentioned Emma's study abroad program in France. I shared stories about David's kids. But while we talked, I was thinking about their Japanese conversation, analyzing every word, every implication. They wanted me to sell the house. If I wouldn't sell voluntarily, they had legal options. They could wait because I was old. What legal options? The house was mine outright. James's will was clear, everything to me, then split between the boys after my death. Michael had no claim to it while I was alive. Unless. A horrible thought occurred to me. Could they be planning to have me declared incompetent, to get power of attorney somehow, to force me into a nursing home? No, surely not. That was paranoid thinking. Michael was my son. He wouldn't do something like that. But then again, I'd thought Michael would never talk about me the way I just heard him talk. Would never discuss waiting for me to die so casually, in a language he thought I couldn't understand. Mom, you okay? Michael was looking at me with concern. I realized I'd been staring into space. Sorry, just thinking about something. What did you say? I asked if you'd given any more thought to what we discussed the other night, about the house. So much for dropping it. I thought we agreed it was my decision. It is, absolutely it is. I'm just saying if you did decide to sell, Jennifer, and I would be happy to help you find a nice condo. We have connections with real estate agents here in Seattle. I'm sure you do, but I'm not ready to sell. Not even to consider it. Michael, I've lived in that house for 40 years. I raised you and your brother there. Your father died knowing I'd be comfortable in that house for the rest of my life. I'm not selling it just because you think I should. Jennifer's perfectly manicured hand touched Michael's arm, a warning gesture. She said something quietly in Japanese. I'm awa ashidasanade. Don't push now. Michael nodded slightly and forced a smile. You're right, I'm sorry. Your house, your choice. The rest of the lunch was strained. They tried to keep up pleasant conversation, but the tension was palpable. When we finished, Michael paid the bill using a black American Express card, I noticed, and walked me to my car. Mom, I really am sorry for bringing it up again. I just want you to be happy and safe. I am happy and safe. Okay, good. He hugged me. We're flying back to San Francisco tomorrow morning, but we'll call you soon. Safe travels. I watched them walk to their rental car, and I saw Jennifer say something to Michael in Japanese. He shook his head, said something back, and they got in the car. I drove home on autopilot, my mind spinning. When I got inside, I went straight to my study and pulled out my laptop. I started with a simple Google search, Michael Walsh, San Francisco. What I found shocked me. Michael's business wasn't doing as well as he'd led me to believe. In fact, it was in serious financial trouble. I found articles in business publications about Walsh Ventures struggling to raise its latest fund. Several high-profile investments had gone bad. One company they'd invested heavily in had declared bankruptcy, wiping out millions. Another had been embroiled in a fraud scandal. But more concerning were the court records I found. Michael was being sued by several limited partners in his venture capital fund, claiming he'd misrepresented the fund's performance and risk profile. The lawsuit was seeking damages in the tens of millions. How had I not known about any of this? Why hadn't Michael told me? I spent hours searching, reading everything I could find. The picture that emerged was of a man who'd overextended himself financially, made bad investment decisions, and was now facing potential professional and personal ruin. There were photos from charity events showing Michael and Jennifer living lavishly, expensive cars, designer clothes, elite social circles. But beneath the surface, they were drowning in debt. The Pacific Heights mansion, mortgaged to the hilt, the private schools for Connor and Emma, likely financed with loans, the luxury lifestyle, all a facade. Michael needed money, desperately. And the most obvious source of money in his world was his inheritance from his father, except that inheritance was tied up in me, in the house I wouldn't sell. I thought about James's will again. Everything to me then split equally between Michael and David upon my death. The house alone was worth close to $1 million now. Half of that, $500,000, would go to Michael when I died. But what if Michael couldn't wait for me to die naturally? What if he needed that money now? The dark thought from earlier returned, declaring me incompetent, getting conservatorship, forcing the sale of the house for my own good. I needed to know more. I needed to understand what they were planning. The next morning, Friday, I called my attorney, a woman named Susan Winters who'd handled James's estate and had been our family lawyer for 20 years. "Catherine, good to hear from you. What can I do for you?" "Susan, I need to ask you a hypothetical legal question." "Okay. If someone wanted to take control of an elderly person's assets against their will, how would they do it?" There was a pause. "That's a concerning question. Is someone trying to do this to you?" "Hypothetically." "Catherine, I've known you for 20 years. I know when you're dancing around something. What's going on?" I sighed. "I'm worried that my son Michael might be planning something regarding my house and assets. I overheard him having a conversation that suggested he was looking into legal options to deal with my refusal to sell my house." "I see. Well, there are a few potential avenues. The most common would be seeking conservatorship or guardianship, claiming you're not capable of managing your own affairs due to diminished mental capacity." "But I'm perfectly competent." "I know that. But if someone wanted to pursue this route, they'd need to provide evidence to a court, medical evaluations showing cognitive decline, evidence of poor decision-making, proof that you're a danger to yourself or others." Could Michael do that? Could he convince a court I'm incompetent when I'm not? It would be difficult but not impossible, especially if he got doctors to testify on his behalf. Elder abuse through financial exploitation happens more often than people think, and sometimes it's perpetrated by family members. Susan's voice was serious. "Catherine, I need you to be honest with me. Do you really think Michael would do something like this?" A week ago, I would have said absolutely not. Now, I don't know what to think. "What exactly did you overhear?" I couldn't tell her I'd overheard a conversation in Japanese. That would open up questions about why I understood Japanese, and I wasn't ready to reveal that yet. Just some concerning comments about legal options and waiting because I'm old. It could be innocent, but combined with their sudden interest in getting me to sell the house. I think we should take precautions, Susan said firmly. First, I'd recommend getting a full cognitive evaluation from a neurologist. On your own initiative, documented proof that you're of sound mind. Second, we should update your estate documents to make your wishes crystal clear. Third, we should consider setting up a trust that would make it harder for anyone to challenge your competency or access your assets. Would that be expensive? Some cost, yes. But Catherine, protecting yourself and your assets is worth it, especially if you genuinely believe family members might try to take advantage of you. Okay, let's do it, all of it. I'll set up appointments. In the meantime, be careful what you say to Michael. Don't give him any ammunition he could use against you later. After hanging up with Susan, I sat in my study feeling shaken. Was I overreacting, reading too much into a brief overheard conversation? But then I remembered Michael's tone when he'd spoken in Japanese. The casual way he'd discussed waiting for me to die. The calculation in Jennifer's voice when she'd said I was stubborn. No, I wasn't overreacting. Something was very wrong. My phone rang. David. Hey, Mom, just checking in. I heard Michael and Jennifer were in town again. How did lunch go? It was interesting. Oh, that tone means something happened. David, can I ask you something? About Michael? Of course. Has he talked to you at all about his business? About how things are going financially? David was quiet for a moment. Why do you ask? Just curious. He seems very focused on success, on maintaining a certain lifestyle. I wondered if everything was okay. Mom, what's really going on? I decided to tell him some of it. I did some research online. Michael's venture capital fund is in trouble. There are lawsuits, bad investments. I think he might be in serious financial difficulty. Jesus, I had no idea. Has he asked you for money? No, but we don't really talk about finances. He knows I'm not in his league money-wise. David paused. Is that why he's pushing you to sell the house? Does he think he'll get some of the proceeds? The house is mine. He won't get anything from it until I'm gone. Right, which is exactly how it should be. Mom, you're not seriously considering selling because of Michael's pressure, are you? Absolutely not. The house is staying mine for as long as I want it. Good, don't let him bully you into anything. I won't, but David, there's something else I need to ask you. This is going to sound strange.